work, the tipping point has already been crossed. And so this sector alone is worth about a meter of global sea level rise.
So the melting has started. If the entire West Antarctic ice sheet melts, it will raise global sea level by 3.3 meters. Now that's a lot of water. But before we panic, let's remember this is a process that's expected to take a while, centuries, even millennia. Jonathan Bamber is a glaciology professor at the University of Bristol. He says the speed of the sea level rise, and therefore the speed of the ice melting, is key.
If it's a millimeter a year, that's 10 centimeters a century, we can adapt, we can move inland, we can, in 1,000 years, who knows what capacity we will have to cope with that. But if it's 10 times that, if it's a centimeter a year, we have really, really big problems. A meter of sea level rise would displace a very significant proportion of Bangladeshi inhabitants. And more than a meter of sea level rise would make large parts of the Netherlands unviable. A meter of sea level rise would be bye-bye to all the atolls in the Western Pacific. It's unthinkable, really, in a way. A meter in over a century is really very, very serious.
So, Sarah, how fast is Antarctica melting today? What can we expect in the future?
Well, that is really the big question. Will Antarctica be continuing to melt at a millimeter a year, or will it be more? Professor Bamber puts it in the hands of policymakers.
I think our politicians can help answer that question for sure. If we take really positive action, strong action, radical action, quite difficult decisions, admittedly, ones that might seem perhaps a little bit painful in the short term, then I think we can save the planet from some of the worst scenarios that I can think of.
And those worst scenarios, Philip, are pretty bad. All of the ice in Antarctica, if it melts, would raise sea levels by 58 meters. Ricardo Winkleman, who we heard earlier, was the lead author of a study that was published in September that said if we burn all the fossil fuels on all of Antarctica will definitely melt.
So does that mean we should all be moving inland or investing in high-rise buildings?
Well, maybe not quite. Of course, none of this is really going to happen tomorrow. Even if West Antarctica melts quickly, the coastal areas will be more affected, let's say, in the next century. So we're really talking about a larger timescale, probably beyond even our children or grandchildren. But Winkleman says that this really still should be our concern.
I think what's important to consider is that the changes in the climate system that we're bringing about right now are really having consequences on these long time scales. If we continue to warm our planet and if we continue emitting greenhouse gases into the atmosphere, will really determine the fate of the Antarctic ice sheet on the long term. So we really need to think of sea level rise as a commitment, and we need to decide what our legacy is supposed to be.
And that legacy, of course, is what's being discussed here at this COP climate change meeting. The scientists are here to tell us what the effects are, and it's up to the rest of us to do something about it.
Okay, thanks very much for that report. That was RFI's Sarah Elzas, broadcasting live from the COP21 Climate Conference. We'll be going back for more from the COP21 in the second half of our programme in about 5 minutes or so. We'll be talking to Rosalind Hyams about the main issues being discussed, including adaptation and resilience, and she'll also be talking about the nuclear aspect, which has been somewhat swept under the carpet over the last few days, which also is quite an important issue when it comes to global warming. Also, in the next half hour, we'll be returning to Amanda Morrow for some more sports news, and there'll be a report on what's expected to be the far-right national front in France in this week's regional elections. It's 5:30. This is Radio France International, broadcasting from Paris. Now, this is Philip Toll with Paris Live PM. It's time for us now to catch up with the latest world news, and reading the news for us today is Mike Woods.
Thanks, Philip. We're starting in Britain, whose parliament is debating today whether to begin airstrikes against the Islamic State armed group in Syria. Prime Minister David Cameron says the aim would be to keep the British people safe from terror attacks. Britain has been part of the US-led coalition bombing Islamic State targets in Iraq for the past 15 months, but Cameron says going beyond Iraq was necessary to fight the group. Britain's debate comes as the United States calls on its allies in NATO to step up military action in the Middle East. U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry made the remarks as he pledged to work with the government in Baghdad to deploy 200 additional U.S. special troops in Iraq. Russia says it has proof that Turkey is the main consumer of oil produced in territory controlled by the Islamic State. Moscow officials said satellite images show trucks transporting oil over the Turkish border and that they know of at least 3 transport routes. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan said the accusations amount to slander and that he did not want to see relations with Russia get any worse. Cameroon's army saying its forces have freed 900 hostages held by Boko Haram. Officials say 100 Islamist militants died in a 3-day operation along Cameroon's border with Nigeria.